Well, how's it going, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? Welcome to episode 3 of the Z Roll Podcast.
What's that song? 3 is a magic number.
3 is a magic number.
Pretty sure it's 3. Let's hope so. Schoolhouse Rock. Anybody else out there grew up with Schoolhouse Rock?
Mm-hmm.
Loved it.
I loved it.
But it's magic because this is a pretty magical podcast. It's our third.
It's our third.
Third one.
Third and done is what I always say.
Third.
This is our last pod. I'm just kidding.
Hello and goodbye. We are done.
So, icebreaker. Let's start that out. Let's just get right into it.
Okay.
The icebreaker for today is a Disney icebreaker.
Yes, and it's a would you rather because we've been doing a lot of would you rathers in the household lately.
Mm-hmm.
The boys are obsessed with would you rathers.
They are.
It's like the funnest thing to do ever.
Yep.
And they just do the same ones over and over, but they still have a blast.
Yeah.
So we thought, let's do a would you rather. And we found a really fun one.
Tucker's is always like, would you rather Junie? Like,
Oh, yeah. Have Junie or a really big house? I'm like, Junie.
And then he's like, would you rather have Junie's pacifier or...
Oh, yeah.
it's just,
or wear diapers.
Or wear diapers.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And you'll do those over and over.
Those are the would you rathers in our home.
Right. They're very entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
So we found a Disney one that I thought, actually found a few that are really fun, but we landed on this one. Would you rather cook with Remy in Paris or Tiana in Louisiana?
That's a hard one, actually.
It really is.
Because I want to do both. But as Tucker would say, Dad, you can't do both.
You have to choose one.
So I think for me, I would say... Man, that's hard.
I know, because I've always wanted to go to Paris, and I love the food
I'm
and
gonna do
vibe.
I'm going to do Remy.
But you're missing out on some beignets.
Yeah, but you know what?
Tiana.
We're going to get beignets in just a week.
I knew you were going to say that.
Actually, I don't know when you guys are going to be listening to this podcast, but we might actually be on the cruise or be... I don't have no idea. We have no idea. Our timeline is so screwed up. It could be like before we go on the cruise. Anyhow, we're going to be in New Orleans, though.
Yeah, we're going
eating beignets
out of New Orleans, and we're so excited to actually try beignets in New Orleans. So I'm going to go with Tiana in Louisiana.
Okay, I'm just going to go Remy because, I mean, Ratatouille is one of my favorite movies.
I love that movie, too.
So
that was a hard one.
Yeah, that's hard. Anyway, guys, we are here talking about parenting. That's today's topic.
Mm-hmm.
It's today's topic.
The big P.
Parenting. the big P. Now, we understand there's a lot of different topics in the whole parenting umbrella.
Absolutely.
But we have gotten a lot of questions about this topic that we're going to get into.
Yeah.
And we are aware that this could be what they call a hot topic.
Yeah.
Some people may not agree with this, and that's okay. Like we're not like forcing anything. We're just saying this is how we do it.
Right.
And there's benefits of why we chose doing it this way.
Right. And also we've learned from people that have done things this way that we love and seen their parenting style, and their kids are now adults, and we're like, what do you guys do? Like, your kids love you guys and have great relationships. We want to have that too. So yeah, again,
I think that's the key, and this is really the key to a lot of different things that we've picked up along the way is we've seen people doing it and real life scenarios, and they're killing it. And so we want to learn how they did it.
Right.
So we're like, hey, teach us your ways. What did you do? Why? How did you come to this conclusion? Kind of a thing.
Right.
And so yeah, that's kind of what we got from this. Before we were parents, there was a specific way we wanted to parent, and we're literally in the midst of it.
Right.
We are in the middle.
And for those of you that don't know, we have 3 kids. So we have a 7-year-old, and his name's Landon. We have a 5-year-old Tucker, and then a almost 7-month girl, Juniper. So that's where we're at in our season. Justin, I was going to say, also has been a youth pastor for like 12 years. I don't know.
It's been like 15 years.
Okay. Longer.
It's been a long time.
And so we've been around a lot of teenagers.
And a lot of generations, like a lot of different.
Middle school.
Yeah.
I also am a teacher. I've taught kindergarten. I've been subbing in like every grade lately too. So it's been really fun just to see like kids in different areas of life. Again, but parenting I know is different, but so the oldest we've parented is 7. So that's just where we're at. But these are just some things we've learned, and here we go.
Yeah. So how do you want to start this one? Because there's just a lot to talk about in this. this topic.
There really is. I know I took down like some notes of things we were talking about, but I think we wanted to go into it with helping answer some questions that you guys have asked us with like coffee chats and stuff and how we do things. And now we can kind of dive deeper in them. So I think traveling is one of our big things. We get questions about that a lot. And actually, we ran into some people, it was so weird, in Idaho that recognized us from our YouTube channel. And they said, you guys have inspired us to travel with kids because you guys do it. So we think we could do it. Or they said something on that lines. I'm like, that is so cool.
They had a little baby and they didn't want to travel because of that. But then they saw us traveling with our kids and all ages. And they're like, you know what? It is possible.
Right.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool. I'm like, I love that takeaway. So we're going to let's start there. Let's start there with traveling with kids. Like, how do we do it? Why have we chose to do it? And all of that. Because we started traveling like,
well, I think the reason why we're going to start,
was
I think sorry to interrupt, but I think the reason why we're going to start there is because this is what motivated us to have this parenting style.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes, that does.
Because there's everything's going to kind of come off of this.
Right.
Okay. So, but the reason why is that we love to travel. When we were dating, we loved to travel. We wanted to travel is the reality of that, and we did go like on mission trips and like we just both loved traveling. It's just what we love doing. So when we got married, we're like, hey, like this is gonna be a big part of our life.
Right.
And so we did a lot of traveling when we could. We were poor as heck, but we did as much as we could.
We did.
But when kids were picked in our lives, we made a decision because a lot of our friends around us, they just stopped life.
They did. And I can understand why, because
100%.
having kids changes your life.
100%.
And it is a whole different ball game.
You have to have, and this is what it was, is like we wanted to travel. So you had to have something kind of pushing you to this, I guess.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like there was some kind of motivation that we had, and that was we wanted to travel. But there's some other things too. Okay. It wasn't just that, but there was that. So we can go into this now. I just felt like we needed to talk about that.
No, that's a good preface because I feel like that definitely has helped with our parenting style. So with that, we realized when you travel, you have to bring a lot more stuff when it comes to kids. There's, nap times. There's, they're teething. They're this, they're that. So it changes your itinerary a little bit. But something we've kind of said is like, we want to, basically not change our life to revolve around our kids' schedule, but help them to basically go along with ours. In reason, like we understand there's times where they're just like, okay, they're exhausted. Let's, cut this short. Or, we definitely improvise in things. It's not like you're going along with what we do. We've definitely changed that. But at the same time, we've realized, like we can still travel. We can still have fun and bring them along and they can learn to adapt to things, and they really did. And we can say that because we started it with Landon really young, Tucker, and now Junie's already going on her first cruise and she's already been to Disneyland. So I feel like we've made it work. It hasn't been easy. There definitely have been times where I'm like, why are we doing this? But going through it together and just working as a team has helped a lot. So I don't know. Can you think we can give some examples, I guess, if that helps on how?
Well, I think you said it, and that is the reality is it's our schedule, it's our route, our thing, and they're coming with us,
right? And
so we had to change that because things are a little bit slower. You have kids now, you can't just like. You have to get a babysitter. You have to, and if you take your kids, just to the store, like a staycation or whatever, there's other, it slows down. It's just the reality of that.
Yeah.
But we didn't stop. And I think it's because we said, no, we still want to do these various things. We're not going to just use the cop out of like, oh, we have kids now, so we can't.
Yeah.
No, we're going to do it. We're still going to do it. It may be slower, it may look different,
right? But
we're still going to do it because there's people who are saying, man, you take your kids, here and there and places and like, yeah, because they are part of our thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like they're part of what we do. They're not running the house. They're not running the house.
Right.
They're not making the decisions of like, no, I don't want to do that. So, things slow down, but ultimately it's our routine.
Yeah. And I think it's cool because when we had kids, we had one of our friends, they were about to have kids and they're like, man, you guys are always doing things. Like you guys are still doing stuff and you have kids. Like, how do you guys do that? And I remember he was like really curious and now they're doing it. And they they love to go hiking and they bring their kids and camping and they're having so much fun doing what they still love to do together as a couple and seeing the joy of doing that with their kids.
Because I think the thing is when you have kids, the scare is, oh my goodness, all the things that I want to do, all my hobbies, all my, whatever is going to stop, because that seems like what a lot of people do.
Yeah.
And that's why he was scared. They're like, how do you, there was hope though, because like you guys are doing it. So there is hope. That means we don't have to, because they're really outdoorsy people.
Yeah.
We can still do all that. And man, they've taken their kids on crazy adventures because they were willing to just, go for it. And even though, yes, it's more uncomfortable and it's harder, it's so worth it in the end.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I guess, is that the example you're looking for? I feel like that makes sense.
Yep, that's what I was looking for. Yeah.
I hope this is not like super just all over the place, because it is kind of hard to like a starting point with this one, like anchor it in. But I feel like that's kind of what made us decide to parent this kind of way, is because we wanted to travel. And we did not like, because we've seen this so many times, and we did not want the kids running the house.
Right.
Yeah. Period. And that might be a hot topic for some. Some may, listening to this, may disagree with this. Or maybe you don't really realize maybe your kids are running the house.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, people that are around you, they will know.
Yeah.
So I would honestly, I would
ask your friends and family.
I would be then this is who we are. We love feedback. We value feedback. And so we ask people around us, like, hey, do you see any of this kind of a thing? And so maybe that's where you start is, hey, do you, like, as my kids, I want you to be completely honest and let them be completely honest and don't be offended, but be like, are my kids running the house?
Right. Do we have a good, balance?
Do we have a good balance? Ask your friends, because I guarantee you the people around you, they already know.
And that's a hard thing to do. It's really hard because I think you think like, well, I know what's best. This is what we're doing. They're my kids, but like, yeah, but what's wrong with getting some input from people that have already been there, and maybe people you really value their opinion. Don't ask people you don't value their opinion. Really think about the people you ask and that really you care about in your life. But yeah, that's a hard thing to do, because I feel like that, like you said, people on the outside will see it. Sometimes it's hard for yourself to see it, because it can happen really easily. And I think you've been the one that had to really help me in this area too, with our kids, and just getting that balance. Like, okay, like, yeah, it's harder in the moment to parent with how we want to do it, but in the end, it's like, they don't want to run the home. Like, they may try to, but they don't want to. And I've seen kids as a teacher where I can tell they have that role in their home, and it's so sad because they're so out of control and they want boundaries so bad, but it's too late sometimes.
I get the side of it when they only have a couple more years in the house, and they don't respect their parents. And the reason why they don't respect their parents is because their parents let them do whatever, because there's been this bad habit that has occurred for so long where the parent has not said, what, you guys are guests in our home. And now that phrase is kind of so I heard that phrase from one of our pastors in our church who does like a bunch of marriage things, marriage classes,
parenting and family stuff.
And depending on how you take that, it could be like, that is really harsh.
Yeah,
Justin.
I was like, that's so cold. There are kids, but
this is the reason.
Yeah,
is the reality is I want to see these boys turn into men. I want to see our Junie turn into a woman, right? I they're not going to be boys forever. I don't want to treat them like boys forever. Well, yeah, we treat them like boys. Hear me out. Don't take this weird.
We understand.
We understand. There's a balance, but ultimately, it's like they're going to be. We want them to have a successful life. We want them to move out. We don't want them to be living with us until they're like 80 years old. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we want them to be more successful than we were.
Yeah.
In life, practically. like everything about it. Like we want that. And so we realize that they're only in our home for so long.
Right.
And yes, they're more than guests in our home. Okay. But ultimately, when we have friends come over to our home and they're good friends, yeah, they're guests in our home, quote unquote, but man, they're family.
Yeah.
And they raid the kitchen.
Always open.
It's whatever. So guest, I think, can be a weird thing, because guests, sometimes maybe you're like, well, we don't know them very well, whatever. But no, we're talking about like it's been us. We started this venture with Lacey and I, and then we have kids. And then when the kids are gone, it's going to be us again. And we don't want to be strangers. Right. There's so many time when the kid has run the home and there's been disrespect that has occurred because they don't respect their parents. Mm-hmm. And because it's been so much about the kids leave, the parents have no idea who they married.
Right.
They don't know them anymore.
And they have no relationship outside their kids
with
each other. Because they stopped doing all those things together because, our kids don't like it, or our kids can't do that, or our kids don't like long drives in the car. You can find a million excuses why not, to do things. But I think something else you said is just with the, I lost my train of thought. It's coming.
It's okay.
It's coming.
This is the cool thing about a podcast. Is you just keep on singing until you got the thought.
Oh man, it was something good too, man. Okay.
You got it? Is it coming back?
No, it'll come.
I can keep on talking. I know you can.
And then I'm going to rudely interrupt you when it comes
to me.
Yeah,
you go for it. But yeah, I think that's.
Oh, there it is. Okay, so when you
I was starting the engine in the car. I was about to go.
I saw you. Okay, so when you said the thing about, our goal is eventually we want to, we're training Landon and Tucker to be good men, good, one day maybe, husbands and fathers, and Junie, a good woman and a good, wife or mother one day, whatever she wants to do. But it's the thing is, people look at it, I think it's silly. They're like, they're kids, but why not start now? When do you start? Be like, oh, they're teenagers. Maybe we should start teaching them to be men and women. It's like, really? Like, I think it's, like you talked about this earlier. We were talking, it's like, it starts today. Like, start implementing those things now.
That's been the excuse we've heard is like, well, when they grow up a little bit older, we'll start kind of making it so, they're about our routine, whatever.
Yeah.
And I hope I hope we're explaining this well. Because it's not so much about the rhythm of like our, morning routines or whatever. It's just that they know, like our kids know that God is first, then it's us, then it's them. Yeah. And they understand that order. And that's what we kind of mean by that about, it's us, then it's them kind of a thing. Like they understand, they get that, they respect that. And this is a whole nother thing, we can go for days, but when we have our arguments, sometimes we'll have arguments, in front of the kids, whatever. But we try to pause it and talk about it, with just us or whatever. Yeah. But the thing is, I think we've made this commitment to each other is that we never will talk bad about each other to the kids. Like I don't like, I can't believe your mom did this, blah, 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 blah. I will never do that because they need to see security. And they respect us more. And that's a whole nother topic.
Podcast.
but I guess what I'm trying to say is people have used the excuse of like, well, it needs to be all about the kids for a season. And then we can kind of like bring it back and then, no, it needs to be about God, number one, then your relationship, husband and wife, then the kids. It has to be that order for day one. Yeah. It has to be, because when are you going to change?
Right.
A bad habit can turn into a year, can turn into 5 years, can turn into 10.
Right.
And then before you know it, your kids are so trained that way that it is very, very hard. It's still doable, 100%. Yeah. You can start something new today, but start today because it gets harder and harder to, change things once things are going.
And it's mainly us. It's our behavior, I think, too. Because it's like...
Sorry, I keep on... If you're watching this on YouTube, I keep on kicking the camera, so I apologize.
You can see a little jolt. Yeah, I think that's the thing is in the beginning, it's like, especially when they're really little, it's like they're definitely more needy, mainly with me if I, breastfeeding and just all the little things it goes into. And then, we're starting to teach them to be more independent and just all the levels, there's always changing times with kids, and then it's like, in elementary years. But with that, I think, like you said, start now, because mainly it's like you're training our behavior and how we do things.
Yeah.
And then they just have grown up with that culture in our home.
Yeah. Of course it's going to be of course things are going to slow down, and I hope you guys are understanding this, but there is a balance with it. Because as soon as it's all about the kid and not about your relationship, your relationship comes second to the kid, that's a red flag. Yeah, it really should be. And so however you look at it, whatever that means, maybe it's a good conversation to have with your husband and wife, and be like, hey, like, wives, ask your husband ask your wives, like, hey, do you think the kids are first in our relationship? And be honest with each other, and say, you know what? Yeah, this is why. I feel like you give more attention because of this. I feel like you give more attention because of this. We talked about this in our last podcast, like conflict. Communicate, but conflict creates creativity. Like, have this good, healthy, in these boundaries conflict to make sure that your kids aren't, number one in your relationship, because the kids want to see security. They want to see their parents killing it with each other. They want to see that.
Yeah.
And then everything's going to be okay. They're going to respect you more. There's going to be right balance in the home. Things aren't going to be all out of order. The kids are going to be disrespectful no matter how you do it, but because they're kids, but they see the order of how things should be.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And they're not, sometimes, they don't like it. They're going to try to fight for that position almost like, and there's been many times when Justin and I have to stand up and be like, nope, no, sir. Like,
I honestly feel like there's seasons when they fight hard for that. Like, they try to find the line.
Right.
And we bring that up. We're like, man, I think Landon is trying to find that line again, because he's super disrespectful, super like trying to like be power, have the authority, or he thinks he knows all right. We call him Mr. Teenager when he's in those time frames. But the kids will do that. They'll push, try to find that line, and they try to find your weakness. Yeah. They already know your weakness, and they're
very smart.
They're very smart, and so you just need to be cool and level-headed and be like, no, sir, that's not what's happening in this home. And you know that.
Yeah.
You know that, and engage in conversation. Like, I had a conversation with Landon today. Yeah. And I think this is a great example of that. Because again, it's me realizing that he's 7 years old, and I want him to be a man someday.
Sorry, it's like gonna bring up a lot of emotions. I was like about to Mama Bear came out, and I was like emotional and tears with this whole thing that happened this morning. But it was good. I was like, let's talk about it.
Well, I think this kind of can help conclude everything we're talking about. Yeah. And why we think this is beneficial to parent this way. Yeah. And to parent in the way it started with traveling. That was our motivation of like, we want to make sure, our kids are second in what we do. You know what I mean?
Well, second in in the sense of, because I feel like that could sound weird. Second in what we do. It's not like traveling comes first before kids.
Oh, no, no,
yeah. No,
totally.
I just want to make sure they are our biggest priority right now is raising our kids. 100%. But in the sense of but
ultimately what I'm trying to say is that just because they say something doesn't mean we do it.
Right.
Like we value their input. We actually have family meetings all the time. Like, hey, what would you like to do here? Like Saturday is coming up. What do you guys want to do? Like, we value their input, and we believe everyone has the right to have, their input in our family. Yes. But they know mom and dad will ultimately make the decision. I think that's what I mean is there's some families where the kids will make the decisions and the kids will just go along with it, or the parents will go along with it.
Like
we will go along with the decision sometimes, but number one, it's they know that it doesn't happen all the time. Like, we value their input, but it's not like we're going to go with their input every time.
For sure.
Does that make sense?
Yes, for sure. And because I've, as a teacher too, I've seen that, and some kids, and they'll tell me, I didn't want to go to school today, so I didn't come, or I didn't want to go to church today, I didn't come. Things where we're like, you don't really have an option if you're living in our home. There's times, obviously, they're sick, or they're this or that, or they're just exhausted. But at the end of the day, they don't make those big decisions. One day they can make them for their home, but while they're living with us, it's like, these are, mom and dad's choices. You may not like it, but you'll learn to like it.
Yeah, and I know, and I understand there's going to be a lot of different opinions in this whole thing, but again, seeing youth graduating like I get them when they're like from 12 all the way to like 18, and I'm still with them in this age of finding out like college and whatever. And this has been a conversation I've had countless times. And kids, when they get older and they can finally start, you know, analyzing their self and like figuring out why they're the way they are, they will say this. They'll say, I wish my parents listened to me more. I wish they would just listen. I wish there was more boundaries in my home. I wish they would tell me what to do. Like, these are things that I constantly hear, basically saying, I wish I wasn't the one making, you know, making these decisions. I wish my parents made the decisions and they stood up.
Right. And
I've heard that so many times, and it's heartbreaking. This is why I'm like, look, our kids have every right to have an opinion. We want them to. We want them to grow. We want them to be independent. We want them to have, you know, we want them to be thinkers.
Think critically.
Think critically. Yep. And to figure out solutions. And so we will take their, like, that's a great idea, Landon. Let's bring that into the conversation. You know what? Wow, I didn't even think about that. Like, we realize that there's multiple ways to do something.
Yes.
Just because we do it this way doesn't mean that they have to do it that way.
Because you can learn so much from your kids, and I love
even if
that
it's like
part
even
of
if it's like pouring cereal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a routine I have, but that's just because I've done it for so many years. What if Landon does something differently? It may be different, but it's, I mean, cereal's not a thing, but I'm
pretty
just
cut and dry.
I'm just trying to, it's a very cut and dry process.
It's okay.
You see what I mean?
We get
it's like, I think sometimes it's like, why are you doing like that? Well, but I learn from my kids all the time.
Yeah.
And so I want us to be really clear that, man, we're not like these like, hey, you know, whatever. Like our family, we want input. We want to think different. We do value their input because we're like, oh, that's actually a good idea, Lane. I never thought about it like that. And we praise them for
we
those
love
things.
seeing their creativity.
But they know end of the day, mom makes the decision, dad makes the decision. Right. And they feel comfortable with that. They enjoy that.
They feel safe.
They feel safe with that. Anyway,
back to the story. Wow, we rabbit trailed.
It's crazy. I think there's just so much to talk about and unpack.
I know.
And also, like, I think this podcast can be taken so many different ways if we don't explain ourselves exactly.
Agreed.
You know what I mean? And I hope we're being clear. I think the reality is, if you know us, you know how we parent. Like, Cassidy lives with us, and she always is like, wow, I just love the way you guys handle this and do this, because we love our kids, and our kids are like, they are, I mean, they're our everything, you know. But we do know what's healthy for them, and we know that we don't want them, they're not at the stage in life where they can make decisions for themselves sometimes. Yeah. And but we're training them to do that. And this enters into the story. Yeah. So today, Lacey usually picks out Landon's clothes.
Yeah, I just set him out the night before. It helps,
because, you know, we're getting up, we have breakfast, and it just takes forever. And this will be a good way to finally conclude this podcast. So he gets his clothes, and he has like 15 minutes to really, like, you know, brush his teeth and get his clothes on. I mean, it's a pretty good amount of time. And he knows what he has to do. Like, he knows this is the rhythm kind of a thing.
His routine.
And all of a sudden I looked over, I'm like, where is he at? Like, he has not put his clothes on, and we have to go like right now. And so I'm like, Landon, where are you at? And he started like looked really sad. He's like, I just wanted to find a different shirt. And I was like, you didn't like the shirt mom picked out? And he's like, no, I want to find a different shirt. Now, you know, he's at the age where he, you know, there's some shirts he wants to wear, that we're fine with that, whatever. But he looked off. Yeah. And I'm like, and I said, Landon, I don't really care. You find a different shirt. What I care about is, you know, the time we need to be going for school. Like, and you disobeyed that, basically. Like, because this has been a conversation in our house for a while. Like, he knows, and he knew he knew
not staying on task.
He was not staying on task. Yeah. And so we get in the car, and I'm like, Landon, what's going on, bro? Like, let's talk about this. And he started just crying. And I'm like, bud, like, what's going on? Like, what's on your heart? You know? Because again, we're trying to teach them to express
how they feel.
And he's like, I'm like, buddy, just so you know, I don't care if you wanted to find a different shirt. Like, again, I want to praise him for being independent. I wanted to praise him for, you know, picking out his own clothes. That's cool. But I'm like, but what you did wrong was, you didn't stay on task, and you knew you needed to be in the car this time. And he break down, and he's like, well, the reason why I picked out some clothes is because there's a kid at school who's been making fun of me for wearing a Marvel t-shirt. Yeah. And
it was like a Spider-Man shirt.
It was a Spider-Man shirt. And so he didn't want to wear his Spider-Man shirt because he was scared about this kid who would say, like, make fun of him for wearing it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Landon
we have this
loves Spider-Man.
You guys probably hear that. I don't know what's going on. There's some weird. There it's gone. Some sounds, some phantom sounds. Anyway, whatever.
Okay. I lost it.
But anyway, so Landon loves Spider-Man. He loves Marvel. It loves everything. And so, my thing with this, it was like, the kid doesn't like Marvel. Like, who doesn't like a Marvel?
You're like, Dad wears Marvel.
Like, dude, like, what is going on? But anyway, but I realized that there was a learning experience here because he was discouraged that, the reality is he's already at the age where kids are making fun of him. And he then now makes a decision to wear something different. He's starting to turn into something he isn't because he's trying to people please is really what happened. So I had to break that down with him, explain to him, look, this is what happened. Because this kid made fun of you, you feel like you can't be who you are. You can't wear the clothes that you want to wear because this kid made fun of you. And I'm like, Landon, this is something that you will deal with the rest of your life.
Yeah.
People will be negative to you about something. Ultimately, at this age, I'm like, you need to do what God is telling you to do and what mom and dad are telling you to do. Those are the two things that you need to care about. Other than that, like, if you want to wear a Marvel shirt, wear a Marvel shirt. And like, don't let this kid make fun of you for that. And then you change your clothes because you're worried about what he thinks.
Right.
And he started drying his tears and everything like that. And I'm like, buddy, Dad still deals with this today. There's people who will say negative things to Dad, and Dad has to look and be like, look, I am doing what God's telling me to do. And so, you know what? I'm not going to people please. I'm not. Now, there's people in my life that I really look to make, there's safety in numbers and having good counsel and stuff. That's a whole different thing. But the reality is like, I'm not going to be, my day's not going to change because if someone says one negative comment to me, and then all of a sudden I'm not going to like do what I plan on doing because of that person. I people please for a lot of time in my life, and it's not good. It's not healthy.
Yeah.
But then I broke it down even further. I said, but look what happened. This kid who made fun of you, because you listened to the fear, you got up and you saw the shirt, you're fearful you're getting made fun of.
Yeah.
You listened to the fear. The fear then made it so you disobeyed mom and dad because you weren't on time. And it clicked with him. He's like, oh my gosh, I didn't think about that. But because he felt like he gave in to fear, he had a people please, he actually didn't do what he was supposed to do. And I'm like, so many times in my life, I didn't do what God told me to do because I was fearful of what people thought.
Right. And I can totally relate with that too. And I think that's why it just broke my mama heart. Because first off, I'm like, oh, where's this kid? I want to talk to him and his mom. But I was telling Justin, I'm like, I love how you handled it because this is going to happen again. And it's going to be worse. And it's going to get even more rude how kids can talk to each other because I've seen it. And it starts even in kindergarten. And so I love that how you basically taught him, like, if you like Spider-Man, you wear Spider-Man and you rock it. And if you told him, and if he says something or she says something about making fun of you, then you say, sorry, you don't like it. I do. Teaching him basically to be confident in that because there's nothing wrong with it. And it makes me so sad that he looked at the shirt and then like this fear went over him, like, I'm going to get made fun of. And it just makes me
But I think
so
that,
sad.
and this kind of concludes like what we've been talking about is like the reason why we parent like this is because we want our kids to grow in maturity and be men and be women, right? And I told him, I said, buddy, I'm really sorry this happened to you. This is going to happen again.
Yeah.
Not this, maybe this kid, yes, but when you're older even. And I told him it happens to me. And I said, so this is how you're going to handle it is, number one, and I broke it down and I told you already about like making sure that it's what God wants and what your parents want at this point. But what I'm talking about is like, he understood that, wow, like, how easy it is to get off course, because of someone's negativity. And this will keep on going in life. Unfortunately, we've all experienced that before. And what a bummer that is when you live in fear over what people think.
Right.
And I think that's the one thing that really just puts a wet towel on your creativity, puts your wet towel on what God wants you to do in your life, puts a wet towel on a lot of stuff.
Not feeling accepted.
Yeah.
All of that.
100%.
Yeah.
So I told him, I said, look, tomorrow you're going to put your Spider-Man shirt on. You okay with that? And he's like, yes. I'm like, all right. Because it's like, you know what? It's time for you to go there. And if he says something, you stand up for yourself and say, I'm sorry you don't like it, but I do.
Right.
And you walk away.
Yeah.
That's all you have to do.
And be kind and humble about it. And that's the thing about humble. Landon is and he gets this from you. He's very tender hearted towards people. He loves people and he's always including people. And he's just one of those kids. And I'm not just saying it because he's my kid, because I've seen him in the playground. He's kind. He really is. And he loves to he doesn't want to ever exclude, like, because he's very sensitive towards other people's feelings. He can almost like read them. Like he just has this gifting with it. And so learning to do that, I'm like, buddy, like you are going to be the friend that everybody wants if you can be confident, but be kind and humble too, because that's hard to do. And so I'm glad you did that. And also I wanted to bring out too, I think many times as parents, we can easily just step in and be like, I'm going to go talk to his mom. I'm going to go talk to his kid and tell them, you need to stop making fun of my kid, which I understand there are times you need to step in, but I think this is even more powerful of a way to do it, is to give Landon the tools to stand up for himself, give Landon the tools to continue to mature and learn how to handle this. Because like we said, it will happen again. And we don't want to be the mommy and daddy that step in when they're 18 years old and being like, you're being mean to my son, because trust me, it still happens. And that's not what we want for our kid, because we don't want him to be married one day to his wife and still like, mommy and daddy, help me out. Like, that's why we start now. Yep. And so that's why I love the way you handled that with him. And yeah.
Yeah. And I think, again, like, to wrap all this up, because we're a few minutes over our 30-minute threshold, which I don't mean, we just made that up. Yeah. Like, we don't have to abide by that, I guess, but
yeah,
we're gonna close it here soon. Is ultimately like this is in a nutshell kind of how we parent. Like, we realize that, like, number one, God is first in our relationship, then it's us, then it's our kids. Mm-hmm. The kids don't rule our home. They come along with the things that we feel like we need to do, and we are very and again, we want to be really clear. It's like we take a lot of in consideration. We take a lot. We don't just like yank our kids around or whatever.
No, we've learned to say no a lot with things.
Yeah, with things that we ultimately, because it's selfless. You can't be selfish being a parent, right?
Yeah.
And I think we've learned in our life. Speaking of kids, Tucker's coming in. We've learned that we have to. I lost my train of thought. This little man walked in.
Say no, change things.
Yeah,
we're talking about.
Yeah, we've learned to have to say no to self on certain things we want to do. Hey, bud, and so so there's a lot of things that we say no to. But I think end of the day, it's like the kids know they're not the ones rolling the house. They're not boss. Yeah. Mom and dad are boss. And they get that at a young age. Yeah. And I was raised like that. And I respect my parents. I have a great relationship with my parents, because I always knew that they had put God first and then they put each other first. If I crossed my mom, my dad would be like, are you kidding me? That's my bride. Yeah. You don't cross her. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't a thing where it was just like, oh, my, mom comes to me about dad and shares things, and so I feel like I have like this like in with my mom, and no, it's like they were one, they were together,
and you do not come between them.
I don't come between them, and I respected that. Yeah. And I am the man I am today because they raised me like that, and I went along. If they're like, you know what, if you're gonna have a bad attitude, Justin, you can just stay home. Or if you're gonna have a bad attitude, then I'm sorry, we're still gonna do this thing, but you better change your attitude around, or you're not gonna have fun. Like, I remember those conversations. We'd be on road trips and stuff, and I have bad attitude. My dad would be like, "Oh, it's kind of a bummer because we're still gonna do this, and you're still gonna be with us, and you're gonna have a lot more fun if you just change your attitude." And I love that and that's how we're doing this. It's like, just because I'm having a bad attitude, we're not gonna just like, just pack up for the day and like, well, we're going home because kids are having a bad attitude. No, it's like, we'll take them back to the car and we'll deal with it. Yeah. And we won't get out of that car until they have a better attitude, and then they will. I love how Tucker's still in his PJs. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
And I think that is a huge part of that. There's a lot to talk about in this, guys.
There is. I know, because it reminded me of a whole nother rabbit trail I could go down to with, it's called Love and Logic, but I did it in school. A lot of people do it too. But yeah, basically like not putting their problems on yourself. It's like, yeah, he's having a bad attitude because, oh man, we're the meanest parents. We're making him finish, or do his chores or dinner or whatever, the things we do. But rather than like making his bad attitude run the home, we're just like, yeah, turning it around. What a bummer. Like, we're going to have a great night tonight, but I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
You know, but you know what was been cool with that is there have been so many times where they have done a full circle.
Yeah.
Because we just took them out of the scene.
Yeah.
We had a good conversation with them because we think every single experience is there for a reason, and we want to like mentor them and show them like what they're missing out on and how they can improve.
Right.
You know, and I think that's, we, you know, even when they're having a bad attitude, we don't get all flustered. I mean, there's times we do. 100%. We're parents. Like, we're like, why can't they just like
listen,
eat their food? Like, come on, like, you know. But we try not to get flustered because we want them. You know, this could be a time where we can mentor them and they can see, you know, how they can grow from this.
Yeah.
And I've had so many good conversations like I had with Landon, and they've been bonding experience with me and my boy. Like today, he left, like when we got out of the car, he fist pumped me. He's like, I love you, Dad. And I'm like, Landon, I'm proud of you, bud. And he comes out like a little skip in his step. And I'm like, that's the kind of stuff like,
I'm gonna start crying.
Well, that's the kind of stuff like I love being a dad about, is being able to have those moments where it's tough, but I'm also showing him this is a life lesson. This will happen again.
Right. And that builds
this is how you deal with it.
That trust and that relationship, which is so important, because when our kids are older and they're married, like I want them to still want to hang around with us. Like
100%.
You said with your parents, I think that's so cool. And
I think we're thinking of that as we do this, because we want there's going to be a time when, yes, we'll always be their parents, but we're going to be their friends.
Yeah.
Right now, we're not their friends.
No.
And that's a whole nother.
I was about to say we could do another whole podcast on the balance of being a parent and a friend.
I know. With a story.
Part 2 coming soon.
one of our really good friends is Adam and Sherry Lake, and they have a YouTube channel. You should check them out. It's called Leg Life. Yes. They also have a podcast, and it's called Leg Life Podcast.
Yes.
And we do some vacations with them and everything. And we went on a Alaskan cruise with them.
Yeah.
And they gave us some high praise. And I just want to explain this because this really meant a lot to us. But
because of who they are, because of the things they say, because we love them. They're the best.
We look up to them. And anyway, so, but they said something to us because they're not able to have kids. And they were talking about how they've been around a lot of couples who have kids, you know, and they were saying how thankful they are because we are secure in each other, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And we have our relationship, and it's not a relationship that it's all about the kids and it's this. And it's like, we can have our independence, the kids have their independence, and we can all have, you know, we can all be together at the same time.
Yeah. And they were telling us just how well we've done that. And we were like, oh, thanks. Like, it was just really cool to hear that, especially, from them. We're like, wow, we very much value their opinion. So stepping outside, it's like, wow, like and it's nothing to be like, oh, we're great. It's like, we are doing what we set out to do. That's so cool that somebody else saw that, because that was our goal before we even had Landon 8 years ago. So it's like,
we can have fun all together and we're like a team, but we know that we can still go off and do things together, and we know each other. We haven't, and I'd never want that to ever happen to like one day, like we're strangers because the kids came first.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a lot more to say. I think we can do a lot more podcasts with this.
We tried to wrap this up like 5 times.
If you guys have any more questions or our opinion or whatever, let us know. You can go to our YouTube channel and comment below. We record our podcast. We're waving at you if you're listening. And I think it recorded everything. There's some weird stuff flashing on the camera. But we'll see what happens. But anyways, guys, I think that we're going to wrap this up. We're going to conclude this. And wow. Yeah. That was a big one.
That was a big one.
We're going on 43 minutes.
And I think we could have kept going. So maybe you have to hit up this topic again. And if you guys think of questions or areas we like lightly tapped on that you want to talk about more, let us know. Comment down below.
And hopefully it all made sense.
Yeah. Again, I feel like there were so much things that we said that we don't want to get misconstrued, because we love our kids. At the end of the day, they know they are loved very much. But sometimes it's hard to, the way we love our kids is the things we have to do. Sometimes they're hard, and it's really, not comfortable, and they don't like it. But at the end of the day, it's like,
they're thankful for it.
They are thankful for it.
Like today with Landon, like he was very thankful we had that conversation. And I could have called him and been like, "Oh, buddy," and I did call him. I said, "I'm so sorry, buddy. Like I'm so sorry that happened. That broke my heart." But I also was just like, buddy, this is gonna happen again. And I felt like I needed to tell him that. And he just looks at me like, "What the heck?" But I unpacked. I'm like, this happens to dad still. And then we know what Landon said. He told me he's like I want to be just like you, Dad. That's what he said. And that right there showed me that this works, guys. Like this parenting works. So not sweet. Having your kids run the house. Like love God first. Yeah. Love your marriage, each other, and then your kids come after that. Yeah. I'm telling you what, guys, it's good stuff. Yeah. And don't take our word for it. Talk to other people who are killing it, who are doing it, who their kids who are older have good relationships with them. Right. And really respect them. Really respect their parents. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway,
that's huge.
But yeah, ask if you're in this pocket right now and you don't know if your parents are or if your kids are running the house. Ask your friends. Ask your friends what their opinions are. The people that want to see you, not just ask anybody. The people who are like in your court. You know what I mean? Those kind of people who are like fighting for you, you know?
Yeah, not necessarily the yes men that be like, oh yeah, whatever you want to hear, I'll say it. Yeah, Find the ones that will speak truth.
But the people who, they'll tell you, they'll be like, you know what? We've noticed something, you know? Or like, you know what? Yeah, you guys are actually killing it. Yeah. Like proud of you, whatever. I think it's always good to just check yourself, you know? Sure. Yeah. Sometimes like if you smell like B.O. for so long, you don't know you smell like B.O. That's just the reality of that. Okay, guys, we're at 46 minutes, so we're gonna end this. Love you guys, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Bye.
Or we'll hear you. Or we'll hear you guys in the next one. You'll hear us in the next one. We're not hearing you guys. No. I'm used to video. I guess we'll see you in the next one.
You if you're watching
and
this.
And then you'll hear us in the next one. Oh, whatever. Love you guys.